All right, and we are back with the RVB Spring Cup. We are on to our 400th match of the day. I am Sir Squeebles here with Apothony to commentate. Apothony, you want to tell us who the teams are?
Well, I'm not actually sure what the teams are, to be honest.
Well, then I'll tell you.
Computer.
So first,
I'm
we
professional.
have Gary at his exchange. It's worth noting. I just heard myself. I tore the space-time continuum. It's worth noting that these are both teams that won their first matches earlier in the day. Gary had a sex change and Mike Check both did really well. Mike Check actually had a clean sweep. They racked up the full 30 points. Gary had a sex change, only killed 14 points worth. Not sure what was up with that, but I know they both did well and they were fun matches at the beginning of the day, so let's see what they pit against each other. Already seeing some Ishkers on grid.
Yeah, we've got some Ishkers. We've got a Neros and Tristan from the Mike Check team.
So it looks like their total comp, Ishker, Vexer,
Oh.
Tristan, Oneros.
And all landing at 0. The other team, we've got a Simi, we've got some Hawk Harpy, another Harpy.
So this is
an AF team. This is an Ishker armor team with a Tristan.
We've actually seen both of these comps at different points during the day, probably in their first matches, but the Gary had a sex change team banking on a comp that actually lost their match to Caracals, so they really went with the risk here by flying all assault frigates and a scimitar. They invested really heavy in that Logi. Fortunately, though, there are no Caracals here. Mike Check followed a similar philosophy, and they have those assault frigs and, again, a Tech 2 logistics, so not a low damage team per se, but a little bit less DPS on field than we've seen in some of the cruiser-based comps. It should be pretty lively, though, as everything on field has less than 15k EHP.
Yeah,
Besides the
it's very
Oneros.
interesting to see how on top these two Tech 2 Logi pilots are going to be. Because, I mean, we have got assault frigates here. And while, sure, they have an okay tank, their buffer is really not, as much as, say, a cruiser, for example. So if the DPS can burn through into structure or through into armor for the shield team, then they're just going to be able to bleed and switch through targets. With that in mind, the Simi is going to have a lot easier time because obviously Simi reps land at the beginning of the cycle, whereas the Aneros reps are going to land at the end of the cycle, meaning reps are going to take a little bit longer to apply for the armor team.
Right, and the countdown is finished. We're off. I do favor the armor comp here. I think the fact that they have drone DPS that can travel is going to benefit them over the shield ships, which have to get right on top of the primary, but we see Jack the Ripper already taking damage in the Ishker for Mike Check.
Simi already in half shield. That guy's going down fast, but there pumps the ASB cycle.
So he's got 9 charges to get some shit dealt with, and it doesn't look like there's really any appreciable damage going out onto Mike Check. That Ishker of Jack holding pretty solid right now.
Yeah, Jack does look like he's tackled down pretty hard, but his tank is holding for the time being. Can't really tell where the drones are for each team at the moment. Looks like actually no, they still are on the Simi, still trying to burn through that, still burning through the charges as best they can. Looks like Skyleth in the Harpy is now taking some damage as well, but the Simi dropping right close into armor. Is he going to start bleeding armor? Nope, there's the full ASB charge, ripping him back up almost completely full shields. Look like that first charge we saw at half shields must have been wasted.
Well, it is an interesting possibility. I don't think this is the case, but in previous tournaments, we've seen Tech 2 logistics fit with old school shield boosters and cap injector, which would mean that potentially the Scimitar could tank forever if that's the case. But based on the boost amount, it looks like it is an ASD, and he's got to be running low on charges by this point.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're going to see the Simi going down in short order. Looks like DPS is switching onto the Aneros of Nyland from Jack. They're not convinced they can break him. They're going to see if they can break the local tank of the Aneros. But they just are now behind in the DPS war. That Simi is going to be running low on charges. The Aneros, maybe it's AAR fit, maybe it's pure buffer fit. We don't know at this point. It's still handling through shields.
Yeah, and Gary had his exchanges between a rock and a hard place here because they're not making any progress on these assault frigates. They know that they can't waste time and DPS on them, so it's a good call to go to the Oneros, but Tech 2 Galenti has that insanely high kinetic thermal resist, which is the majority of the damage coming from Gary. So I'm not overly optimistic about them breaking this Oneros. You can already see the Oneros repping. If he's repping that preemptively, I would venture a guess to say it might be a normal armor repair and not an ancillary.
Yeah, quite possibly. The Simi's already bled into some armor damage, dropping down to the bottom of shields next. They'll see how many massively crucial chunks of damage the Simi's going to take. Oh, there we go, into structure. Simi, no more charges for you. Is it going to pop? Is it going to charge? No, Simi goes down. That's the reps off the field. These drones from the Ishka and the Vexer, if they're running warriors, which I believe they are, they're going to start ripping through the assault frigs.
And we can see just the somewhat beefier tank on these armor frigates prevailed. Yes, the Oneros reps only hit at the end of the cycle, but it looks like these Ishkar pilots have fit a healthy amount of buffer. The Oneros pilot was really good with the pre-lock, he even pre-cycled reps on Jack, and flawless victory. I'd say there's really not a way back into this for Gary Hedis exchange.
Yeah, we've now got Judge in the Hawk going down. He's about to take off field. There he goes. Looks like the Enyo might be next with some split DPS from earlier. He's going to be the easiest to kill, although obviously none of these guys are going to be catching reps because there's no reps left on field. Tycho, Kane, and the Vex are trying to take some damage. Maybe they're trying to get a last-ditch DPS. Nope, keeping it on Nyland, but Nyland tanking absolutely easily. Just fantastic cap life on the Oneros. Oh, Jeevel now in the Enyo, going down into structure, about to go down. I think we do have a second wipe here.
That would make our third on the day, second in the winners bracket, but really impressive showing from this armor comp, and I think I'm proud of myself for having put my chips on them right before the match. I think people are going to see that the control of having open mid slots in an armor comp is worth more than the extra little bit of DPS from the shield. The webs, the omnis, everything coming to bear for these Vexers that allows them to apply damage pretty effectively, and yeah, they've just cleaned this right on up.
I mean, I think a lot of the time we see in the AT, and especially in matches like this, where it's a smaller number of not as heavy ships, you know, it's all about who dictates the nature of the battle. That means, are you in a shield comp where you can go fast, where you've got a bit more DPS, or are you in an armor comp where you're likely to have more mids, you're likely to have more tackle available to you?
Yeah, that was beautiful. Really strong showing from Mike Check. I was rooting for Gary Hedis exchange, but well-deserved victory for the Mike Check guys, and they will advance to the next round of the winners bracket, where they'll face off against Sancha off the starboard board, or starboard bow, sorry. That match should be freaking amazing. Gary Hedis exchange, unfortunately, will bump down into the losers bracket, but double elimination is a good thing for teams like them. They definitely deserve another go, so we'll see them later in the day. Not sure who they'll be paired against, but hope to see them make a comeback. I think they've had a couple really good fights and not necessarily any hard mistakes made. I think they got beat before they ever undocked on this one.
And with that, I think this was our last match together, wasn't it?
It is. You and I are both leaving on the same match.
I hope we get to spend some more time together before the AT, man. It's pretty fun hanging out.
It was a good time. I don't understand anything about StarCraft 2, so I think we should just go ahead and rate that out, but everything else I'm open to.
Alrighty then, I guess we shall see you guys next time.